Hi, my name is Richard Peña, and I'm the program director of the Film Society of Lincoln Center and the chairman of the selection committee for the New York Film Festival. In a certain way, I think each film is picked a little bit separately. The thing about the festival, because we have such a limited number of slots, it truly is a zero-sum game. I mean, if you take film A, that means you're not going to take films B, C, D, etc. My third year at the festival, we opened with the Coen brothers film Miller's Crossing. That Friday, the critic for the New York Times at the time, Vincent Canby, wrote a pretty scathing review of the film, and he ended it saying, we have to feel sorry for the festival. Opening night is when all these rich people come and they don't know anything about cinema, so you have to show them something like this that's easy, that they can understand. So he not only insulted the festival, he insulted the audience, so you can see what a good mood these people were in. And literally from 20 minutes into the film, people were streaming out, streaming. It was in Avery Fisher Hall, 2,800 people. I don't think there were 1,000 left at the end. I mean, just the entire time. So it was like sheer hell to sit there and watch all this happening. In a way, it seems to me, if you look back to the 1960s and you think of, so many of the great films that were released back then, whether it be, 8½, or Hiroshima Mon Amour, or the Antonioni films, you really wonder, where would these films be released today? What movie theater would show them? Really the art houses that we have play fairly mainstream stuff. I mean, there was a time when more than just a few art houses showed foreign language subtitled films, many other cinemas as well, and some of those films turned out to be considerable hits. That was a time, I think, when people truly were interested in finding something new in art, something new in cinema especially. At some point, and we can all point our fingers at different dates, I think the tide turned and people became much more conservative in their tastes and much less accepting of that kind of experimentation. I think we come from a culture where essentially you're told again and again that any kind of work of art that demands too much of you is, there's something wrong with it. That all should be for enjoyment, that all should be for just relaxation, and that's sad. In a way, I think a generation that really wanted to look for another kind of cinema is actually now in their 60s. I mean, it's no accident that when we do many of our series, the audiences are older. And I don't know if films have changed. Certainly the interests of film students have changed. For example, I think if you speak to a lot of my students at Columbia, many of their references are now televisual. They're to Mad Men, they're to Treme, they're to Sopranos. That's been their background. It's no longer to the French New Wave or to great Italian or Latin American films or something like that. A few of them, yes, but not many. I think if you went through the last 10, 12 years of the festival, you'll find quite a few things that were designed as television programs, but that we were showing them, here on the big screen. Of course, depending on how you define that, if you go back to the 70s, almost the whole new German cinema was really made for TV. We live in a world where every single person's a filmmaker. I mean, there's no longer, I think, the distinction. When I was growing up, there was such a mystique about filmmaking. It was enormously complicated, very technical. You had to have lots of training, and it was just really something about it that put it out of reach of almost anybody in a sense. And then, of course, time went on and things got easier and easier, and well, they're literally now almost any adult that we know could make his or her own film, and in fact most of them are making their own films. Part of what's happened with the proliferation of digital technology is there's just film happening in many places, everywhere really. I mean, you can't think of a country where there isn't a film movement in one form or another. Well, I mean, I think there'll always be movie theaters. My own prediction is that in the next 10 years, we'll see a lot of movie theaters closing down. Probably a little bit less so in New York, simply because New York people live here partially because of culture, and that'll be part of it. But I think, in a certain way, I think film going will become more and more a museum-like experience. Now, we still have opera companies, but the U.S. used to have hundreds of opera companies. Every state, every city had several. Now, what do we have, 30 in the United States? Maybe. Essentially, it's become a real, almost museum art. You have to go to very special places to see it. That's my suspicion. Now, it doesn't mean people will watch less movies. They'll just watch them in different ways.